What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Culture 316. I am one of your hosts and producers, Jordan Nahisi.
Joined by the nappiest Mo. What is that, people?
The nappiest is crazy, but thank you guys so much. Thank you guys so much for coming back. Also, thank y'all for joining our 316 space for Crown Jewel. We had a lot of fun per usual. Justice for hash browns. We're not going to get super deep into that topic, but if you know, you know.
Podcast
But
Browns.
on to show announcements. If you are watching on YouTube, be sure to comment, like, and subscribe to our page. If you are listening via Apple Podcasts or Spotify Podcasts or anywhere where podcasts can be streamed, be sure to give our show 5 stars. It is how we get, up in the rankings and how the show becomes bigger and better than ever. So be sure to give us that 5 stars, like, comment, subscribe. But we're going to get right into it because first things first, this past Saturday was WWE's annual Saudi show, Crown Jewel, and a lot was happening and a lot was going on. But I wanted to check in with Mo and kind of see her letter grade and how she would kind of grade Crown Jewel. What were some of the highs, some of the lows? I just kind of wanted to know what your perspective was on the show, Crown Jewel.
All right, FYI, I missed the main event, but I did watch the pay-per-view, and I honestly, from what I watched, even excluding the main event, I thought it was a pretty good show. Yes, one or two matches, well, not even matches. I didn't really give too much about Miz's segment, and I think probably the weakest link for me personally has to been Rhea Ripley's match, like the little fatal four-way they had. I could have really done without it. But outside of that, the show was very much high energy the entire night. The crowd was in love the whole match. I want to say, personally, I thought that it was banger after banger. I like the way that they put focuses on the major titles. I was very happy with Seth Rollins' match, to be honest. That had to be my favorite match of the night, next to Logan and Ray. The focuses on those two titles, I really enjoyed with WWE. Like at first I was like, damn, they really giving like Roman not Roman. They giving damn, I'm tired, bro. They giving Seth they giving Seth and Drew a lot of time for this belt. I'm like, that goes to show you how important it was. At some point, I was like, God damn it, they might give it to Drew just because of how much effort they're putting into defend this belt for damn near 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
That's be one of my favorite matches, and I thought that was fire. But the match of the night for me, since I did not see the main event, was definitely Logan versus Ray. That got a lot of heat. We're gonna get into it, but I love their chemistry. A, B. Shout out to Logan and his reaction skills because he didn't save the goat's life. Shout out to him, bro.
Right.
Um, but see, the match itself was great. The counters were great. The chemistry was great. And I love the way Logan won without making Rey Mysterio go out as a punk. Because obviously we don't like seeing people like Rey Mysterio lose. Duh, it's fucking Rey Mysterio. But I
Right.
love the fact that they put on a really good match, and they let Logan go out as a heel and do something pussy like with the brass knuckles or whatnot. Because I feel like if he got a clean victory over Ray, I actually would have been tight. But I appreciate them putting over a new star. Logan deserves it. That was my match of the night so far. So honestly, if I have to give it a letter grade, B plus. Is B plus
Mm.
fair? I'm gonna go with B plus, kind of like those two little segments I just mentioned between Miz and the girls. That I could have been out with, but B plus is good with me. What do you think?
I would actually give it the same grade. I would give it a B plus. I thought that there were so many things about this show that were just so good. Part of the reason why I feel like a lot of matches got ample time was because it wasn't a super stacked card. I think it was like 6 or 7 matches. So every match had enough time to be as great as it could be. And so that's the reason why I think that a match like a Seth versus Drew went off the way that it did, because if they had less time, I don't think it would have been as good. Also, I feel like another strength with that Ray and Logan match was the kind of setup of how Santos kind of put the brass knuckles, right, pretty much right in front of Logan so that he can use it. It has the potential to set Santos up for a heel turn, or not. But it's just the fact that they did a slight subtle move that kind of positioned Santos to either remain a face or go heel. Like, it's up in the air. Now
You
as
think
far
that?
Yeah, absolutely, because the
No,
way
because
that
like, he stepped on it. He stepped on the brass knuckles as if he was trying to prevent what's
yeah,
his
he was trying
face
to
from
prevent
getting it.
Logan. He was trying to prevent Logan's mans from passing it to him. But if you saw right before the 619, or the attempt at the 619, I think it was, Santos like had the brass knuckles in his hand. He was about to hit Logan's mans, and he ended up just putting the brass knuckles on the ring apron and ran after the guy. He never physically
Mm.
put his hands on the guy. He never, you know what I mean? Like, so it could have easily, that could easily turn into something later down the line, whether it's implicit or explicit. So I love
Mm-hmm.
that. I loved the return of Kairi Sane to WWE. Um, and this is kind of a form of long-term storytelling, right? Because Bailey was one of the people that was responsible for Kyrie kind of leaving, and to see kind of Kyrie come back in a way where she was helping a former partner in Io Sky, to kind of continue to drive this tension between Io and Bailey, because Bailey is always offering her up for opportunities and kind of speaking on her behalf when she didn't ask to. I think it was a genius move, because now I'm curious to see what's going to happen next. Is there going to be, are we going to see a new Damage Control where it's going to be Oscar, well, not Oscar, where it's going to be Io, Kyrie, and Dakota Kai? Like, what's next? These are the things that have me kind of wondering. And then, of course, the Roman Reigns LA Knight main event was such a great main event, because it was one of those things that even though LA Knight lost, you can tell that this is not going to slow his momentum, and it's only going to kind of further accentuate what he's doing currently. So I think that the overall crown jewel was a B plus. But I want to know how everybody else thinks. Let us know in the comments below. How do you feel the crown jewel went? What letter grade would you give it? But we're going to be moving on to the next topic. So, uh in light of that, right, we are now on the road to the last big four pay-per-view of the year, which is Survivor Series, which is chock full of rumors and drama and speculation. But the one thing that we have for sure is that we have three matches that are set on the Survivor Series card. So first things first, we have the Women's World Championship is going to be on the line between Rhea Ripley versus Zoe Stark. The Intercontinental title is going to be on the line with Gunter versus The Miz. And we have our men's War Games team set. We have the Judgment Day versus Seth Rollins, Sami Zayn, Cody Rhodes, and Jey Uso. So I want to know, how do you feel about this these matches? How do you feel about the Judgment Day being in the War Games match, along with everything else?
I'm sorry. Why is Zoe Stark still getting a push? It's just all right. Like that. That to me is not for Chicago. If I want to bring it to Chicago, I feel like that's not the match that I think the crowd actually cares about. I don't think the crowd hates Zoe Stark, but I also don't think that the crowd feels much of anything seeing Zoe Stark. I think she had a reaction when she was attached to Trish Stratus for 5 minutes, and I think that afterwards we kind of got the same lukewarm reaction we got from her on NXT. So I'm a little bit like surprised that that's just who they went with for Rhea, but I know that they mixed it up in that fatal four way, so there's tension. So do I care for it? No. Then you mentioned Miz versus who now?
Gunter for the Intercontinental title.
I mean, that's an easy W for Gunther. I mean, I never really complain too much when I see a Miz match because, um, I mean, Miz, he's not the best wrestler on the planet, but I mean, he'll make you look good, and he'll definitely build a storyline towards that to make it interesting enough. I mean, that's good for padding Gunther's resume. But I do like the team that you just mentioned for war games. They're having their own war games
Yeah,
essentially, right? I do that. To me, I feel like it's probably going to be the most exciting thing, and I'm still anticipating Punk is going to wiggle his way into there. And if Punk does wiggle his way into there, do you think we would ever finally get the infamous angle that people are talking about with like CM Punk versus Cody down the line? Do you think they would try to work out an individual storyline?
I think that Punk and Cody is definitely a possibility, but before I'm visiting Punk and Cody, I'm visiting Punk and Seth. I think that
Mm.
Seth has made it very, very clear on his stance of CM Punk. And I'm pretty sure that if CM Punk were to come to the company, those are two guys that are going to do business. They're going to talk about it, whatever the issue they have, they're going to resolve. So I don't think that it's going to be like anything that happened in AEW. But um, I think that that is a feud that they should definitely visit first if they're gonna have some type of feud to kind of kick off CM Punk's kind of return to WWE. But I
Mm.
outside of that, I agree with you. I think that the Judgment Day versus this War Games team is definitely hold on. Is definitely going to be baby. Sorry, yo, that was my girlfriend calling.
Hi, girlfriend.
You landed safely. Okay. So, I think that those are perfect War Games teams. And I feel like even outside of the CM Punk potential return, there's still a form of drama that's kind of looming. Um, because once again, Damian Priest still has that Money in the Bank contract. Seth Rollins is the world champion. He's going to be in that match. And War Games is an extremely brutal match. So who knows? Maybe Damian will try to cash in at Survivor Series. Who knows? But there's so much to be kind of left to the imagination. But I feel like we're going to see. I'm very, very excited. All this happening in Chicago is not by coincidence. And I'm just going to leave it at that. But I want to know how everybody else feels about this upcoming edition of Survivor Series. Let us know in the comments below. But we are going to move on. So, uh, speaking of WWE and potential returns, it has been heavily rumored that WWE is looking to sign the former New Japan Strong Women's Openweight Champion, Julia. I wanted to kind of get your impressions on this. Do you believe that this is a sign of anything that's happening in WWE, or are you just kind of figure out who is Julia, like, and what can she potentially add to the WWE roster?
Okay, so I don't watch Stardom, but I have seen the name Julia fly around before. It was definitely not the first time I've seen it, and I know a lot of people hype up some of her matches. I've seen a few clips of it, and from what I'm seeing, I'm very pleased. Triple H loves working with Japanese wrestlers. You could clearly tell like that's just his other facet of wrestling that he just loves working with. And with the idea of them pulling Kyrie and getting her back and then bringing her in, I'm curious to know like what direction they're trying to go with fighting style in WWE because obviously like WWE has like their own formulaic style.
Hmm.
Um, but I feel like Japanese women wrestlers do have something to offer that maybe like the American audience could get used to. We see it with Asuka, of course, and we do see it with Io, but it's like toned down to like a WWE way. But we definitely got to see it full throttle when we got Asuka versus Io.
Hmm.
So I think it'd be pretty cool to just add that in more often with wrestlers like Julia, because now we got Asuka, we got Io, we got Kai, we got Julia. I'm like, that's a lot of fun combinations and matchups to like introduce to the crowd.
Absolutely.
So I think it's fantastic. It obviously has Triple H written all over it, and I'm just interested to see what they choose to do with her first, but also how do they choose to present her because over there she's held to a very high regard. I wonder if they're going to invite her kind of like the same way they invited in Asuka when she came in. Like they kind of like made Asuka feel like somewhat of like a mystery,
Right.
And like we as she like slowly unraveled before our eyes in NXT, we just saw her as like this threat that can't be fucked with,
Mm.
So I wonder, are we going to get like a second introduction on what we got with Asuka? You know what I mean? And a more emphasis on Japanese wrestling because that'd be kind of cool. We haven't seen that in like what almost a decade.
Yeah.
I think it'd be pretty dope. I'm interested. But what do you think about her and how WWE may choose to present her?
So, I've watched some of her highlights. I don't watch Stardom regularly, and she's the real deal. Also, to kind of reference a couple of episodes that we did before, she was actually number 2 on the PWI Women's 250 list. So, this is
Mm-hmm.
someone who isn't just a random name. This is a woman who's considered one of the top 5 women's wrestlers in the world. And if that is the case, then I think it just kind of affirms the fact that Hunter is cooking right now. Like Hunter is cooking. If you look at what's happening in NXT, there's a bunch of women's tag teams that are being formed and being polished and being reformed. If you look at what's happening in across all divisions, we see the introduction of Jade and how she's been made to feel as a big deal, even though she hasn't had a match yet. We see the return of Kyrie and kind of making a new layer to the story between Io Sky and Bailey. And now we have the possible introduction of Julia. And it's interesting because Tony Khan and AEW just announced that Mariah May has just signed to AEW, who was another heavily touted free agent. And it was kind of already speculated that she would be a part of the AEW roster. But I think that Hunter is very, very much committed to women's wrestling, very, very much wanting to see women's wrestling thrive in WWE. And I think that I don't know if she's going to present her the way that Asuka was presented per se, because there's only one Asuka, right? But I do believe that you have the opportunity to just add more depth to that roster and create more valuable storylines and create more valuable opportunities for the women. I'm not necessarily the biggest Nia Jax fan, right? Obviously, we know that there's a history of her being unsafe, injuring multiple women superstars. However, her reintroduction into the Raw roster has added depth to that roster and now has
Right.
put that division in a place where women can feud with someone other than a Rhea Ripley, and it feels important because Nia Jax has been, is accomplished in her own right. So I feel like what Hunter is doing is something that he's been a very, very big proprietor of for the past 10 to 15 years, and that is trying to see women's wrestling flourish in WWE. And I think this will be a great signing and a great addition to that roster. So, but we want to know
Awesome.
how y'all feel about the possible introduction of Julia into the WWE. Let us know in the comments below. But we are moving on. Oh, I got to make sure that my rundown is good and is safe. All right. So speaking of WWE and speaking of developmental and NXT, it was reported yesterday that NXT has officially signed a new media rights deal with the CW network. They are set to debut in October of 2024. It is rumored to be a 5-year deal and the largest increase in NXT's media rights ever. So, I wanted to get your impressions on this, right? NXT is moving from the USA network to the CW network. The last time we saw CW in WWE was Friday Night SmackDown, which is years ago. I want to know, how do you feel about NXT moving over to the CW?
Did they get the same day, same time slot?
I believe that they get the same day and the same time slot.
Okay. I mean, that's pretty big. I mean, I feel like another one of Hunter's projects is trying to get people to take NXT seriously again. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like yes, thanks to some people in the main roster going down and just some improvement with some storylines that they've been doing, um that there has been more emphasis on NXT. They've been doing a better job at getting viewers, maintaining viewers, and whatever they did, shit, it worked. To get the
Yeah.
CW, it's a pretty popular network. So good on them because now you could actually say that they have three stronger brands now that
Mm.
can't be fucked with. So that's another W. That's another W for WWE. They kind of been hitting their stride between these
Yeah.
signings, the ratings being AEW. It's paying off. It's paying off. So honestly, good on them. What do you think?
I think it's incredible. NXT has kind of been known for having this kind of cult like following, it kind of went away for a little bit as far as the peak popularity aspect of it, because of just their kind of their desire to kind of lean towards a more polished, less indie product.
You mean Vince
And I
touching
think
it?
that kind of, huh?
You mean Vince touching it? Vince and who
Yeah,
else?
that's
Who else is
yeah,
touching it?
exactly.
Bruce Pritchard.
Jesus.
There we go.
Bruce, yeah, Bruce. I mean, both Bruce and Vince, but
Yeah,
it was less indie. It was more WWE. It was more polished. It was more charactery, more gimmicky. Um, and I feel like they kind of strayed away from that extreme, and now they're kind of in a dead middle. And while NXT versus AEW for that whole title Tuesday thing, was it a big show for AEW? Absolutely. Was it a big show for NXT? Absolutely. Do I believe that NXT and AEW are on the same level? I don't really think so. But what it did prove was that NXT has been spending a lot of time improving its product and trying to get
yeah,
back to a place in which it stands out on its own without necessarily needing to constantly compete with AEW in order to be relevant. Like the guys that were being put over and the guys that were being used outside of the legends were people that they have been fine tuning and honing in on, whether that be Braun Breaker or Carmelo Hayes. Like these are guys that they've been investing in over the past 2 years and investing in their stories, and they just added, a Paul Heyman there and a John Cena there to kind of add some good touches onto what was already happening. But I think that everything that they've been through the past 2 years has kind of led them back to this moment, right? I think the last time when they were talking about media rights deals, USA was giving NXT, I think allegedly like about 1 million per show, which is whatever. But if it is the largest increase, I can only imagine how much that deal is and how much that means to WWE. So I'm very, very eager to kind of see what product they put on the air, but it should be very, very interesting. And I think that NXT is in a great place, and I'm super, super happy for them. But we want to know how y'all feel about WWE hitting the CW network by way of NXT in October 2024. Let us know in the comments how you feel. And last but not least, we have a pretty this is a hilarious topic, because in a recent SEC filing, it has been reported that Vince McMahon has been listed as a part of the board for TKO, but he has been listed as a risk factor. Here is the following statement in regards to Vince McMahon. Mr. McMahon's membership on our board could expose us to negative publicity and or have other adverse financial and operational impacts on our business. His membership also may result in additional scrutiny or otherwise exacerbate the other risks described herein. Any of these outcomes could directly or indirectly have adverse financial and operational impacts on our business. It's a pretty heavy statement if this is coming from TKO in regards to Vince McMahon. I kind of wanted to know how you feel about this statement. Is Vince a risk? Is he a risk factor? And if so, why do you think that TKO wanted to buy WWE from him?
well, okay. Well, he didn't miss on a damn thing regarding Vince. Because Vince has always been, he's always been someone that's sus. Put it that way. Like no one ever has looked at Vince McMahon as being a saint. He has done a lot of things even before what came out
Right.
that qualified him as being like a real life villain.
Mm-hmm.
But he's a great businessman at the end of the day. Um, his age is catching up to him, and so are the skeletons in his closet, and that's why he is where he's at. But you could excuse a lot of things, but still move through with business plans because business is business. But when you have something as hefty as what just released with Vince, like that's just something where if you associate with yourself with that, it is bad business.
Yeah.
That unless you try to detach that person away from the company. And by itself, Vince has done a phenomenal job with WWE. between and I'm not good with this type of like dialogue, but like between just the investments, the stock holding, working with this group, working with that group, signing contracts here and a lot of stuff. Like they built WWE up and acquired so much money with them that the company itself, in spite of being tainted by Vince's actions, is still like one of the biggest companies that comes to mind to this day. Like I'd be thinking like Disney and WWE when I think of just like companies that are just built from the ground up that are just like powerful and strong. Like you want to get next to that. You want to be around that. You want to have some form of just like a percentage of just like holding on like the stocks when it comes there because it's gonna make you look good. Just say that you even work with that or you engage with that. That all being said, I think it's still smart to if you could just get him out the way, which I
Yeah.
think they've been trying to, and they've been somewhat successful getting Vince out the way. Of course, him being him, he's gonna want to have some bit of control here and there, but you're slowly ushering him out the picture, and he knows he can't be as involved as he used to. Like what's been done is done.
Right.
So yeah, and honestly, and if he wasn't being ushered out the picture, he wouldn't be able to feel so bold enough to have made a statement like that because knowing Vince, he would probably find some way to axe or bully somebody for trying to speak badly on his name or sue, but he can't because his back is against the wall. He knows. He
Right.
knows. He can get away with it now. So yeah, I don't see anything wrong here. Shit, if I could do it, I would do too. But what do you think about it?
So I think kind of piggyback over what you were saying too. Vince McMahon is a genius. Vince McMahon is the man who made professional wrestling a global phenomenon. He took this thing that was popular in the States and he turned it into a worldwide brand. And he was able to polish wrestling so that it can be up there with a Disney or an NBA or an NFL as far as size, as far as creativity. The only thing that really rivals WWE is some of the top movies and TV shows ever. So to be able to be at the top of sports and entertainment for the better part of 40 years is a huge accomplishment. But as you said, as he gets older, his demons are catching up to him. His skulls are coming out of the closet. The skeletons are in his closet are starting to show themselves. And I believe that, when you have allegations against you, it does have that potential to harm your business. However, I think it's just very, very interesting that this is coming now, because before the TKO merger, Ari Emanuel said that he didn't want to buy WWE unless Vince McMahon was involved. And so it leads me to believe, were you just not aware of the allegations against him prior to this? Or did you just butter him up so that you can acquire the company so that when you acquire it and you assume majority ownership, you now can push Vince out? I believe it's the latter. I believe that if you acquire a $9 billion company and you know that it could be even greater, and you know that the only thing stopping it is the guy that holds all the power in the reins and is allowed to make a sale, you butter him up. You do, you speak well to him, you speak well of him, and then once you acquire a company, you do what you got to do to make sure that he's out the door. I mean, I think in Vince's contract, it said that he's still guaranteed a certain salary or a certain amount of money, regardless of if he is to be on WWE for the rest of his life or if he were to be fired unceremoniously. So, I mean, it's not really going to hurt Vince's pockets, but I do believe that they know a couple things. They know that Vince, at this stage in his career, may not be best for business for WWE, that Triple H is the guy that needs to take the creative reins, and that in order for this to run smoothly, Vince McMahon cannot be a part of WWE in any way, shape, or form. Keep going. Can't hear you.
My bad. I was saying, do you think that Vince has accepted that, or do you think that he's just falling for it, and this is just
Um,
karma?
I think he's falling for it. I think he's honestly falling for it. I think he fell for it. I think that he was over and done with wrestling when he initially retired, mostly because he just didn't want to be a part of the drama anymore, and he didn't want to, be a part of that process of possibly being removed from his position. And so he just kind of said, I'll just see myself out. I think that when Ari Emanuel kind of approached him about a potential acquisition, I feel like there was a little bit of hospitality involved that led to Vince feeling a little bit more vulnerable and open minded to making some type of creative return to wrestling. And I think that's what allowed him to kind of slip into a space. And now I think he's just being pushed out. So I think Vince fell for it. I definitely think that Vince fell for it. So
Karma's a bitch.
that's a fact. But y'all let us know in the comments below how y'all feel about this whole Vince McMahon TKO saga. But that concludes our show for today, y'all. Thank you guys so much for tuning in with us. We hopefully will see you guys next week. All right.